Hello, roller coaster gamers. This is Mr. No Ride, and this is my top 10 roller coasters I've ever ridden. Now, it has been a little while since I posted my most recent video, and it's been just over a month since we went on our Florida trip, and I got to ride some new roller coasters, went to some cool places, two new parks that I've never been to before, including SeaWorld Orlando and Busch Gardens Tampa, and I might do reviews for those parks later on, and also for some of the new roller coasters I got to ride, and some of those will be on this list, which is like kind of why I'm making this. I feel like after this trip, I've now been to enough parks where I can make a top 10. So let's get started with my number 10 roller coaster. Is Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. This is the only roller coaster at my home park that is on the official list. There is one honorable mention, which we'll get to when we get to the honorable mentions from my home park. The Twisted Cyclone, I think, is the best roller coaster at Six Flags Over Georgia. It's just real. It's just, even though it's one of the smaller RMCs, I feel like it's still really good for what it is. So any of you who don't know who RMC is, it's short for Rocky Mountain Construction, which is a manufacturer who takes these old wooden coasters that nobody likes and they put steel track on them. They make them a bit more wild, yet they're smoother because it's steel track, and they can make them go upside down, do some crazy turns and everything. And this is what they did. So this used to be a wooden coaster called Georgia Cyclone. RMC came in, they put steel track on it, and now it's Twisted Cyclone. It's been Twisted Cyclone since 2018, and it's much better than Georgia Cyclone was. It's really smooth, has excellent inversions, has a great ejector airtime. I think it's the best airtime in the park, in my opinion. And it's just a great, like, even though it's short, it packs a punch. It really does. So we'll be moving on to number 9, which is Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. This is one of the 3 roller coasters from Cedar Point to make the list. And it's one of the tallest roller coasters in the world. It's 420 feet tall. The launch sends you from 0 to 128 miles per hour in 3.8 seconds. That's an incredible acceleration there. And when you ride this is like you're waiting there on the launch track. They're doing the countdown, and you don't know what to expect. And then you just take off. It feels like you're on the Millennium Falcon going at the speed of light. Everything is a blur, and you feel like you're gonna like black out nearly, which we didn't, but you know, it certainly feels like that's gonna happen when you're on it. It's like a flash, you know. And then you reach that height of 420 feet. You go over it pretty quickly, so there isn't really that much time to take in the view. And then you go back down, you twist, do the spiral drop, and then you come back down, going as fast as you were when you started. And it's one of the most insane experiences. The only reason it isn't higher is because it's only 30-second ride. If it had some more elements after the big top hat, like after that drop, maybe it would probably be closer to like my top 3 or something. But that's the reason why it's only at number 9, because all you do is you launch really fast and you go up really high, then you come back down, and then it's over. But what is in that 30-second ride experience is absolutely exhilarating, crazy, awesome. So that's why it's at number 9. The next roller coaster on our list is Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure at Universal Islands of Adventure. It's probably one of the hardest roller coaster titles to like speak out. It's a really long title. Most people just call it Hagrid's, but even if you're not a Harry Potter fan, okay, this is like such a magical experience. All right, it's a family coaster, right? It doesn't go upside down. It doesn't have crazy elements or anything, but the theming is just so good, and the architecture and everything is so like cool to look at. This roller coaster is what replaced the old Dueling Dragons, which were a pair of B&M inverts. There was the ice, which was blue, and then fire, which was red, and they interacted with each other, and you could race. When the Harry Potter section was built around it, they changed the name of the ride to Dragon Challenge, and they stopped it from dueling. And I think because of an incident where someone got hit by something, and they added metal detectors to the line and also all the other rides at the park. And I got to ride that before they took it out. They tore down Dragon Challenge in 2017, and I got to ride it right before they did that. And they were cool, but this I think is well worth there is a worthy replacement. It's one of the most expensive roller coasters ever built, and you can choose whether you're on the motorbike or the sidecar. And there's some cool stuff. Spoiler alert, y'all can skip ahead if you want to. This is spoiler what happens in the ride. There's a part where you hit a backwards, like you go up a spike and then you go backwards. Then you go on a different track backwards. You enter a building and there's a drop track. And it's like so cool. And that final launch is really intense, even for a family coaster. So yeah, it's probably it's on this list. It is the best family coaster in my opinion. All right, so now we're at number 7, which is Montu at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This probably it's on the list. It's my favorite B&M invert that I've ever ridden. Right, just the tunnel usage, the Egyptian kind of aesthetic that they're going for here. I love the blue track as well, and it's super intense. The Batwing element, which is in the middle of the ride, it's a dive loop that goes through a tunnel, then comes out and does an implement, and that is such a tight element that you go through it and you feel like you're gonna lose your legs. Like it's like so like the G forces in that element are really like crazy, and it's just like compared to some other inverts that I've done, like Batman Raptor, um, it's just the best invert. I don't know. I can't explain it exactly why, other than like there's so many trenches it goes through, and I think the elements are all really good, and it's just a really fun invert. All right. So now we're going on to number 6, which is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. This is the only roller coaster from SeaWorld Orlando to be on the official list, and it's a hyper coaster, and it's one of 3 hyper coasters I've done, and I think it's the best one, mostly because of the smoothness. Obviously, I think it's probably the smoothest B&M hyper I've done, although Intimidator is pretty smooth too. But this also has really good flow to airtime. There's one hill, this one in this picture right here. You experience sustained floater from like here to here. You're floating up out of your seat through that whole hill. And then there's other cool elements, like there's a speed hill, which is a low to ground hill. And the second half of the ride after the mid course is okay compared to the first half. You pretty much you do one hill, you do some turns, and it goes over the main plaza area of Mako, like here, and it goes over the water, which is really cool. But the airtime hills in the first half is what makes Mako what it is, and that is probably the best B&M hypercoaster I've ever ridden. And the color scheme is also really great too. So now we're moving on to number 5. This is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This is one of 2 Giga coasters I've done. This one's by Intamin. The next one on the list is by a different manufacturer, which we'll get to. But Millennium Force, it is just really good. There's a lot of coaster enthusiasts who say, oh, it's forceless, it's overrated. I feel like it's so overrated that's become underrated. And I think that's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't expecting it to be amazing, and it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Of course, the elements it doesn't have too many crazy elements. It's pretty much doing a bunch of wide turns and an airtime hill every now and then. But the people saying it's not intense, I disagree with, because I rode it in the front row, and that first turn after the drop, I grayed out, and and you keep the speed throughout the whole ride. You're just going around this track going at what, 93 miles an hour, and it may not have too many crazy elements, but you are going really fast. And the view from the top of the lift hill right next to Lake Erie is the best view on any roller coaster I've ever seen. And the fact that it's just a small, lap bar, you feel so open going around this whole layout. It's just really fun experience. And if you're in the front row, beware of the bugs, because you might get smacked in the face by them. But that's just part of the experience. So now we're at number 4. This is the other Giga Coaster, and this one's built by B&M, Millennium Force Intamin. And this is, it's a similar speed, similar height to Millennium Force. It's 95 miles per hour. It's 325 feet tall. It's a similar type of coaster, like a Giga Coaster. It's that 300-foot coaster going at a similar speed, but the elements make this better than Millennium Force. Millennium Force, you're going around, like I said, these wide turns, and every now and then you go over a big hill. This has a bunch of tighter turns that are rapid, like they happen rapidly, and you're flying through them. And the fact that you're going 95 miles per hour through these low to the ground turns is really intense. And probably my favorite element on the ride is you go through this element called the treble clef in this picture. You go over this turn, you do this, and you hit a 90-degree bank turn, and you kind of slow down just a little bit, and you get nice like sideways airtime before diving into a tunnel. And this element happens right over a pathway. You see that this turn here is this turn here. You go over the pathway that you walked in to get into the park. It does this. It dives under the pathway. It's one of the coolest looking entrances to an amusement park. And it's also really good at night. Has a really good sign and everything. And that drop, man, it feels like you're falling forever. So now we're going to number 3, and it's Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. This is the third of the. This is the third one of the 3 Cedar Point coasters on this list. Sorry, and it's the best at Cedar Point to me. It's a really long ride. It's probably the longest RMC. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's the longest roller coaster RMC has done. And there's just so much airtime, so much aggressive elements, but it's still smooth, right? And this is like Twisted Cyclone, except on a much larger scale. This was a wooden coaster that nobody liked, called Mean Streak. RMC came in, they put steel track on it, they made it taller, they made it faster, they put really crazy turns, made it have good air time, made it go upside down a couple times. And one of those inversions, this one, which is apparently called a zero G stall, which I don't think it's a stall. So a zero G stall is when it's like you're going through a barrel roll, except you don't go all the way through it. You go upside down and then you flip back the other way instead of a normal barrel roll, if you can picture that. But most of your G stalls, you stay upside down for a long time. This one, you go into it and you go out of it. I would consider it like a snapback or something. I don't know. But it's right here, and it's really whippy element. But I think the best element on this ride is the outer bank turn in this picture here. You're getting sustained floater and ejector. It's like a mix of the two there. And you're kind of sideways on the outside of the turn, going through it, and it lasts a long time. It's so weird, but it's so cool. And again, it's a really long ride and has a lot of great airtime, and is probably one of the best roller coasters in the world, which is why it's number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list is another RMC, which I consider to be my favorite RMC, is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Now, this one isn't as long as, say, Steel Vengeance, but I don't think it needs that length. All right, and it's not a short. It doesn't feel short. It definitely feels complete. And actually, I feel like length of Steel Vengeance may seem like a more of a positive, but this roller coaster like because it's shorter, feels like it ends going at a faster speed. So on Steel Vengeance, I feel like it's so long that by the time you reach towards the end of the ride, like those last couple of hills, you're going at a normal speed. You're not going slow, but you're not going all that fast either. On this, you hit the brake run flying, and they have a really good way of ending it. So you go through a really big airtime hill, like you go up out of your seat. It's probably the big, like one of the bigger drops on the ride, even though it's towards the end, and you hit the brake run right after that, and it's just a great way to finish. But this ride, you know, every roller coaster throughout the ride gradually loses speed because of gravity and friction and whatnot. But this feels like it's going, what, 72 miles per hour is what it hits at the drop. 70, 80 miles an hour, I'm not sure. But it feels like it's going that speed the whole ride. It's so crazy. And every element, like this element right here is called the death roll. It's one of the best inversions on a roller coaster. So you're going up this turn, and then then you flip back the other way. You go through a barrel roll while you're descending, and it's a crazy inversion. And then there's also this wave turn where you're on the outside of it, and a lot of RMCs have wave turns. Twisted Cyclone has a wave turn. Steel Vengeance has a wave turn. I think Lightning Ride at Dollywood has one too. A lot of RMCs have these like turns where it's almost like an airtime hill sideways, and most of them you float up out of your seat on them. Like on Twisted Cyclone, that's a floater airtime moment where you're sideways. This one ejects you out of the seat while you're sideways. It is absolutely insane. It's by far the best wave turn, and it's probably the best element on this ride. And it doesn't even end there. There's a lot of crazy elements as well besides that, and the drop is slightly steeper than Steel Vengeance. Steel Vengeance has a vertical drop 90 degrees. This one is 91 degrees, and it doesn't seem like that's much of a difference, but you feel it when you're on it. You feel like you're being ejected out of the seat on this drop. It is absolutely insane. Iron Gwazi is so good. It's probably the most intense roller coaster I've ever been on besides like Top Thrill Dragster. It is absolutely insane. Now, we're going to have some honorable mentions before we get to number one. And these include, first, Afterburn at Carowinds is another invert like Montu. This one is an honorable mention. It's my second favorite invert. It didn't quite make the list. And the reason it's my second favorite invert is because, similar reason to Montu, it uses some tunnels, but Montu uses a lot more, which is probably why I have it ahead of Afterburn. Afterburn has some tunnels in it, and they're really good. And it's like a Batman. It's like similar size. It's not that big of an invert, but it's a lot smoother, right? And I think the elements are better. And again, the best element on this ride is the Batwing. It has a Batwing like Montu, and as you just go through the dive loop, you go through the tunnel, you feel like you're gonna lose your legs, then you come out of it, and it's just really good. So that's why Afterburn is an honorable mention. Now we have Goliath, which is a B&M Hyper at my home park, 650 Georgia, and it was so close to making the list, probably the closest out of these to me. The only reason it's not on the list, and the reason why I prefer Mako to it, is because it's not that smooth. And I just noticed this recently. Goliath, I would say, before, like was perfectly smooth to me, but now, like the past few years, it's developed a bad rattle for some reason, and I don't know what it is, but it is not a smooth coaster. And it's such a shame because it has the best airtime out of any hyper I've done. It has like floater / ejector airtime on those last couple hills. It has a downward helix, which is a really intense moment. You gray out pretty much every single time, but it's not smooth, and it's so conflicting to talk about this coaster because I want to love it, but it's hard to when, you know, it's shaking. I think it's a smoother experience if you ride in one of the middle seats. So try to ride in the middle seats on this and not the edge, and you might have a better ride. But man, if this were smooth, it would be the best B&M Hypercoaster easily. That's the only reason Mako is better than it. And now we have Maverick. This is probably going to be a controversial one because coaster enthusiasts would be like, just an honorable mention. But Maverick is super good for what it is, right? It has a lot of good, crazy low to the ground transitions. You're whipping right to left, right to left. It has a lot of two really nice 0G rolls and has a 70-mile-per-hour launch on it. And it goes over the water. There's a water effect in it, and it has a beyond vertical drop. For a roller coaster that isn't that big, it's really intense, really fun. But I don't like the restraints. Apparently, the restraints used to be a harder material, which would have been even worse. But now they're not quite as hard of a material. The restraints are padded. The shoulder restraints are padded. But that doesn't prevent me from hitting my shoulders into them. Now, I feel like this roller coaster Maverick, you'd have to ride, like, the more you ride it, the more you get used to it, the more you're able to brace for those abrupt transitions that could throw your head into those restraints. But I've only ridden it twice, and I want to love Maverick, but I can't look past that the restraints are not very good. All right. So if it had like lap bars or something, it would be probably number 2 at Cedar Point. But because of those restraints, I have it at like number 4 or number 5 at Cedar Point. And another honorable mention, the last honorable mention before we get to number 1, is Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. Manta is a B&M flying coaster. And the only other one I've done is Superman at Six Flags Over Georgia. And this one's definitely better. The pretzel loop is absolutely insane. So if you don't know what a pretzel loop is, any of my viewers that aren't too familiar with roller coasters, it's like imagine a loop, like a normal loop is like this, right? A pretzel loop is like the opposite. So you're going like this, except you're so on a flying coaster, you're underneath the track. Imagine going like this. It's like when you're going down, your head is facing the ground. You're upside down there. When you're at the bottom, it feels like you're going backwards. Then you rise back up. It is absolutely insane. And the way it's shaped, it's not shaped like a normal loop. It kind of does like this. And it makes a pretzel-like shape, which is why it's called a pretzel loop. And you have some other cool inversions on it as well. And a really nice water effect as you go next to the water right here. And if you're on this far side of the train here, this bottom side, you actually get wet. I wasn't expecting it when I rode it. I got water on my knees, and it was like I wasn't expecting that at all. It was super cool. It's just not, because the reason why it's not like top 10 is because flying coasters are kind of annoying. Like they take a long time to dispatch, and you're oftentimes sitting on them, hanging like this, just on the brake run, waiting to get off. And that's why I can't like put it in the top 10. But for a flying coaster, it's absolutely great. So now we're at number 1, my favorite roller coaster I've ever ridden. It's Velocicoaster at Universal Islands of Adventure in Orlando, Florida. What a roller coaster! It's like it balances everything. Everything you want in a roller coaster, Velocicoaster has it. Like, it has wonderful theming. It's at Universal, so it's got to have great theming, right? It has great elements, intensity, airtime, and the airtime isn't like the places where you think you're gonna get airtime, you actually get airtime in other places, and it's just such a good like experience, right? So when you're walking in the queue line, you encounter these animatronic raptors that are in a paddock, and they look so real. You see their eyes twitching and everything, and they're shaking, and the cage next to them is empty. So it's like, oh, one's escaped. And then you have like this pre-show where the actors from Jurassic World are talking to you about the ride, and then the audio and the you're on the first launch, and they're like there's audio and everything, and the theming is just really well done. There's rock work and everything, and raptor statues everywhere. And the first half is really about the rapid transitions. So you're not going all that fast in the first half, but you're getting a lot of like weird airtime like in places, and some cool inversions and everything, and a lot of cool rock work. And then you hit the second launch. The second launch is so intense, and then you shoot up, you go over this big top hat, and you get an incredible view of the lagoon and everything across the whole park. And then you dive back down and you get thrown out of your seat. You're not it's so weird. They slow you down at the top to get a view, but then it's almost like they put a launch on the top hat, and then you go flying down, especially if you're in the back. And then you hit a 0G stall that goes over the pathway. You go over through a wave turn, you go through this outer bank turn, and you get really good airtime there. And then you approach the best element on this whole coaster. You do a small like speed hill over the water. Then you go through what's called the Mosasaurus roll. It's a heartline roll, barrel roll that goes right over the water, and it's everything else pretty high off the ground. This is really low, like close to the water, and it's such a tight like element. You feel like you're gonna get thrown into the water. It's absolutely gnarly, and it's by far the best inversion on any roller coaster I can think of. And then you do a couple more twists and turns into the brakes. Everything on this is really just awesome, and the light package on the trains is really good too. This is a picture of it at night. It's just, I can't think of any roller coaster that is more fun than Velocicoaster. It's even fun to wait in line for. It's one of the best queue lines as well. So yeah, that's why Velocicoaster is my #1 coaster. And now that's the end of the video. That was my top 10 roller coaster I've ever ridden. And let me know if you've ridden any of these, what roller coasters you like, and just let me know about all that in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, roller coaster gamers.